Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will be showing you how I made the capelet for Elsa's spirit gown from Frozen 2. If you're new to my channel and would like to see the 3 previous videos on how I did the embroidery, how I patterned the dress, and how I made the bodice, they are linked in the description below with the materials used in this tutorial as well. To start out, I did buy the art book for Frozen 2 back in December, and I used it as a guide throughout the entire process. However, I'm not really trying for screen accurate as much as my own take on the gown from the movie. So I used this image as a reference and just started draping chiffon on the floor of my studio. I know that it's not the most professional method of patterning, but it worked for me. My goal with this project was to make it all one cut of fabric instead of multiple cuts sewn together, and to also not have it exceed 3 yards in length. I wanted it to be dramatic enough to be impactful, but not so dramatic that I couldn't fit it in my studio. I barely made it fit in my studio, but I still think I nailed it. And there's an Eva. Anytime fabric is on the ground, she's there to inspect it and give her stamp of approval. I think we got her stamp of approval, so we can continue now. So I drape, measure, and cut the chiffon. The measurements will be used later in a diagram for the pattern instead of actually making a pattern of the piece, because printing something that big at home would use a ton of paper, and that's just wasteful. Once I've cut one piece, I lay it on top of my other piece of chiffon, and then I cut the second piece so that they match. Now it's time to bust out my overlock machine. This is the Janome AirThread 2000D. It's making its debut on this channel in this video, so cheers to this machine. Okay, so to finish the edges of the chiffon, I did what's called a narrow rolled hem. This is different on an overlocker than it is on a regular machine. Essentially, this stitch has 3 strands of thread, and when I sew the edge of my fabric, the knife cuts the fabric and rolls the chiffon, and the 3 thread strands work together to encase the edge and make the finish look quite fierce. If you watched the video on how I made the bodice, you probably remember a step similar to this, but if not, I'll go over it again. So right now, I'm going to trace this smaller diamond 90 times, and then I'm going to trace the larger diamond 90 times onto the waxy side of Mighty Fuse. Mighty Fuse is a fusible webbing that works amazingly on chiffon, and that's how I'm going to adhere all of the diamonds onto the chiffon capelet, and you'll see me use them later in the skirt as well. Then I will cut them all out individually, and my goal for this is to cut a little bit inside the drawn line so that none of the Mighty Fuse will actually seep out outside of the lines of my diamond pieces that I have already created. And now it's time to adhere all of the Mighty Fuse pieces to the back of my diamonds, or the wrong side of my diamonds. And I did this all in a batch because I just thought it would be faster to adhere them via batch versus adhering it to one side, waiting for it to cool, and then adhering it to the final piece. So this step took me quite a bit of time, but I still did the thing, and it was well worth doing it in a batch. In order to prep my chiffon for placing the diamonds, I actually pull out my entire piece of chiffon, and I bring back my book, and I start on one side, and then I basically place a purple diamond at the bottom where all of them are going to go, and then I build up the diamonds from there. Once all the pieces are in place, I'm going to actually lift up the diamond just to the halfway point and actually mark it with my water-soluble marker. Don't worry, I know that this comes off when I use water. This is the exact marker I used on my Silk du Peony for Saki Zao, so I know this one works, and I don't even have to worry about doing a test with it. So I will mark all of the diamonds and all throughout the entire piece, and then I will actually clear them away completely, lay the other piece on top of it, and mark it through the chiffon there, and this is how I can get them to line up basically the exact same space. Now, to adhere the diamonds to the chiffon, I'm going to line them up so that they match with the center. The center of the diamond matches with the dots on my chiffon. And then I'm just going to press and hold for about 5 seconds at a time on each diamond. And I do this all the way around. It's the exact same method that I do all the way around the whole hem of it for all sets of diamonds. So now I'm going to rhinestone the heck out of this capelet, and I start with the diamonds at the bottom, and I use these really pretty like diamond shaped rhinestones that kind of match the colors of each diamond. And then I'm going to start adding the lines of diamonds that go up the capelet. And I use the book as reference for this, but once again, I'm not really going for accuracy. Now I'm going to take a minute to just kind of describe to you how I did the dip dyeing process. Since I didn't exactly take any footage of it, my kitchen has awful lighting, so there was no way to really get a good angle and proper lighting down in that space. So to do the dip dye, what I did is I put a quarter of a bottle of Rit synthetic dye in the purple in my, it was a 3-gallon pot of water, but I only filled it up about half of the way so that I could dip the fabric in and pull it out. So I filled it up with all of the fabric in there, so I had an idea of like how high it needed to go, and then I brought it up to 190 degrees on my stove. I didn't want it to be boiling, but I still wanted it to be hot. Then to dip dye it, I took each individual piece of chiffon and I would bring it slowly down into the water and pull it out for an entire minute, and then I would hold it above the water for a minute to kind of let some of the dye wring out, and then I would repeat this process, but I would only go 2/3 of the way up versus the entire way that I had gone before, and I would do that for 1 minute, and then again let it drip dry for a minute. And then finally, I would allow it to do the same process, but only go halfway up. And I dipped it in and pulled it out for a total of 2 minutes, just consistently dipping it and pulling it out. And then I would let it drip out for 2 minutes, and then I would rinse it all out and let it just dry by air. And that's how I got the dip dye effect, or the purple effect on my chiffon piece. I also spent a total of 15 hours rhinestoning this, and I used over 3,200 stones on the capelet, so this process took me quite a bit of time. So instead of having a time lapse of all those hours, I'm just gonna have the time lapse of like a little bit of it. Like I think it's maybe 30 or 40 minutes of it. So with that being said, let's move on to how I attach it to the bodice. Finally, I hand sew on 3 rather large snaps to the top of each of the capelet pieces. I do 1 in the middle and 1 on each end. And then I will also sew the other ends of the snaps on the bodice. I wanted to get clear ones, but I just couldn't find them to get here in time. But if you do plan to wear your Elsa dress outside or without the capelet at any point, getting white or clear snaps might just look better overall. Again, I might replace them at some point if I can find clear ones, but these will be fine. They're not going to be the worst thing in the world. And there you have it, how I made the capelet for Elsa's spirit gown from Frozen 2. If I were to ever remake this, I would definitely change the dip dye process a little bit. I think that at the time it was a really great idea and it was really fast and it worked, but when I look at it, they're actually uneven, so I definitely wouldn't dye them separately. I would dye them together. Finally, if you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel, like this video, comment below, and I will see you in the next video. Happy sewing! What do you think, Eva? What do you think? Yeah? Yeah, think I'm doing a good job? like my mommy does the best job. Oh, oh, yeah. Come here, baby. Come here. Are you excited for a new dress to lay under? Are you excited for a new dress to lay under?